As a start, let me again welcome you all in this workshop on Central European Urban Resiliency. This workshop is funded by the International Visegrad Fund, and we are very grateful for that. As you may notice, this workshop is being recorded, and it will be published free of charge on our website. And also, we will make available the presentations on our website as well, so everybody can download it, along with the first workshop presentations, which will be uploaded to our website the next week. So everybody will find everything on the internet. This second occasion is part of a process, because the Ceures project intends to research the best practices of Central European urban resiliency born in the last years. We concentrate on four main pillars: climate change, war, migration, and pandemic. And the first phase of this work consists of 4 workshops where we can connect, talk a little bit, and in each workshop we can hear presentations from the 4 participating countries from distinguished experts. We have Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Hungary in this cooperation. In the next phase, we will create a multi-language modular e-learning material. It will be available in English and in Slovakian, Czech, Hungarian, and Polish. So we will create a free of charge e-learning material, the videos that can be used in university education or just professionals to widen their horizons, their professional horizons. We will also create a Central European Urban Resiliency Handbook by the fall next year, and that will conclude our project. So we're in the first phase, and you are very welcome to ask questions from the presenters. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentations when everybody has made their presentations. So I'm David Seveny, President of the Urban Development Association, and right now I'm managing the project. This may change in a while, but that depends on other projects. Gyula Nagy is the lead expert of this project. Marcel Pickard is the national expert from the Czech Republic, from University of Hradec Králové. Andrea Lelovic is from Slovakia, and right now she is substituting Valeria, who is the Slovakian national expert from the Forum Regional Development Center. We have Eva here, who represents the Polish part, the Polish Academy of Sciences in this project. And we have Annika, who is a PhD student for Eva, and who is also a Polish and the United States national expert in the project. And we also have Christian here, who represents the Hungarian part and who helps Gyula in the project. So that concludes my opening remarks. I'm glad that we can connect a little bit. And if you agree, we will send a list of the participants with an email address as well. So in the future projects, you may connect with each other, the international project. So I think this helps the mission of this project to connect people from all around Europe and hopefully later from all around the world. And I'd like to ask Marcel, who is our first presenter today, to talk about the best practice you chose for today, called EcoMart, a sustainable supermarket solution. Marcel, please, the virtual floor is yours. You may share your screen now. Perfect. We see that.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. It gives me a great pleasure and honor to address this distinguished gathering of colleagues and practitioners. Before I started to create this presentation, I was thinking about urban resilience in a little bit broader perspective. We all know that national governments support urban resilience, non-governmental organizations as well. But I was thinking if there is any support from corporations, from this capitalist corporate world. And I found a few examples I would like to share today. By the way, I represent the Czech Republic, as you can see. Before I start with this specific example, I want to talk about a special foundation, which is called Wood for Life Foundation, which is actually, it's a foundation that promotes the use of wood, natural wood, as a fully renewable material. And its another aim is to spread awareness about the use of wood and its benefits. There is a competition financed by the Ministry of Agriculture. The competition is called Wooden Building of the Year. And this brings me to competition, which is called Dřevěná stavba roku. As I say in English, it's called the Wooden Building of a Year. In this case, 2023. And here you can see several examples that are related to environmentally friendly housing made of wood, implementing wooden constructions and wooden materials. And there is one particular example of this concept, and it's, as I indicated at the very beginning, I was curious if there is any support from a corporation. And I found an example of a penny market in a small town with 5,000 inhabitants in Skutec in center or eastern Bohemia. It's actually first all wooden shop in the Czech Republic. It was built a year ago, and they used to build this construction. They used wood as a renewable resource. The basic idea was that wood is a very natural storage of CO2 from the environment. We know that to produce a cubic meter of reinforced concrete, which would normally be used to build this penny market, would need 500 kilograms of CO2 for 1 cubic meter of reinforced concrete. Whereas when using wood, the situation is actually the other way around. We save CO2 from the environment. This is what the building looks like right now. And now I would like to guide you through the process of building and maybe some other items. The building was completed by A2 Timber Company in November 2022, which means a year ago. And the Ministry of Industry and Trade awarded a prize for this building in its category because the ministry considered this building to be a classic example how things should be done related to the use of wood. The building inside is not only the building is not only made of wood as the only ecological parameter, but there are some other items. For instance, this easy cool, green cooling and air conditioning, which enables to use 95% lower refrigerant costs compared to conventional cooling systems. And there is also dramatic energy savings and CO2 savings by more than 20%. The store inside uses LED lighting only, which makes it also energy efficient and ecological. They, instead of classic print labels or price tags. They use electronic displays, as you can see, so that it's displayed and automatically changed whenever needed. They have their own electric vehicle charging station in front of the store. And for all these things, they use their own photovoltaic power plant, which is on the roof of the house. As you can see, it's the real picture. And this photovoltaic power plant covers up to 40% of the electricity consumption. Now, let's go back to the material. To build this house, they needed 400 cubic meters of wood, and they used wood only from sustainably managed forest. By the way, 99% of the material for the structure is solid wood. There is basically no concrete used whatsoever. For the facade, as you will see, they use 17 cubic meters of thermowood timber, and they boast with an idea that for every tree felled, 1 to 3 new ones were planted in the original forest. So they actually cut one tree and they planted immediately a new one or 2 or 3 new ones in the original forest where they harvested the wood. This is what it looks like right now. As you can see, the facade is made of wood as well. So it's not only about the construction, but it's also about the design, what it looks like from outside. In the surroundings, they built more than 3,000 square meters of flowery meadow. They planted 20 new trees in the vicinity of the house. And they also, which I find very interesting, they also mounted several beehives with bees in front of or next to the store. You can see the beehives in the picture. There is another similar project by a different company. In this case, it's Coop supermarket in Hustopeče, which is in southern Moravia, close to Slovakia, actually. It's another winning project in wooden building of the year 2023, like the one I have just talked about in Skutec. I just wanted to show that it's not just one company, but there are more corporations that deal with a very similar idea, which makes me feel satisfied and optimistic about the future, that it's not only about the governments and NGOs, but it's also about corporations that seem to consider this kind of social and urban resilience to be important. You can see what it looks like when the house is being built. These are supporting structures and these wooden beams. And this is what it looks like inside. You can still feel that you are surrounded by wood, even if you are in a supermarket. You can still see the construction. It's not hidden or covered, as we know that from classic constructions. But in this case, there is nothing to hide because it's natural wood. So it's actually a good idea to display it. They also have pots with trees and shrubs on the roof, as you can see. There is another project very similar. In this case, it's a basic school in Olešnice, also the Czech Republic. You can see that the outer facade is again made of wood, so it makes it very natural, and I hope that the students or pupils must enjoy the environment much more than when they have a concrete basic school building. A small construction example would be a beehive in Studené. And a large-scale project is a swimming hall in Louny. All these projects I have just talked about use natural wood on a massive scale And the first two projects are, as I say, corporate projects. In this case, it's more a governmental project. And another thing is very different, and it's about Czech Tiny Houses, which is a company, and they build wooden houses, so-called tiny houses. They boast with the fact that basically all the construction is made of wood, including insulation inside. It's combined, but this is the final outcome. It can be used as a cottage or a weekend house, or it can be actually, when it's a little bit larger, it can be used as a family house for a small family, for a couple, etc. Nowadays, these things seem to be quite popular, not only in the USA, but also in Europe. And as I say, there is a Czech company that focuses on these wooden houses. And these are the resources I used to get the information. As I say, the core message of my presentation is that it's not only about governments and NGOs that could support urban resilience and environmental improvements, but it's very important that nowadays many large corporations realize the fact that it's important to be beneficial for the society and for urban environments. Thank you very much for your attention.
Martha, thank you for showing us these inspiring buildings. And as always, I have some questions, but I hold them till the Q&A session. So stay tuned. Okay. Our next presenter is Eva from Poland. The presentation title is Multicultural Lessons. Eva, please take over the floor and you may share your screen. Perfect, it's working. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, sorry, yes. Right. Okay, as you can see, my topic is slightly different, or I would dare to say completely different, as it relates to migration, I would say. But what is hidden behind migration is social integration or multicultural integration. So before I go over to this initiative, I would like to say a few words, well, maybe as a background story. While working as being engaged in quite a few projects on social integration and diversity policy, it's quite obvious to me that there is no good or wise migration policy without a wise integration policy. And this is one of the challenges that I would say that Poland nowadays, and especially its cities, need to cope with, in particular when facing an almost overnight shift, as you know, from an ethnically considerably homogeneous society to a, I would dare to say, binational one. Well, as well as other processes of social diversification are going on recently, and well, since I would say since 1990, being quite visible. The value of this initiative that I want to present is embedded in its long-term perspective, as the target group is or are children and the youth, that is young people. The skills developed allow for a social integration in the future, which is very important for our resilience discussion. So that is for social integration and for the strengthening of community ties. because as we know, cities may continue to become resilient with every disaster, like the pandemic or the war behind next to our borders. But without social cohesion, next to political, economic, environmental conditions, they will not break the vulnerability circle. So this is a small introduction, and now over to my initiative, which, as I said, is called Multicultural Lessons. Okay, right. I'm starting with a quote from Abdul Qadir Gaber Farah, which is a motto, I would say, a leading motto of the Multicultural Center, which organizes this this initiative. It says you need to plant a tree first for it to provide shade in the future, very much related to what Marcel said in his speech. We understand this as this kind of leading idea that that the Multicultural Center in Warsaw is applying in its everyday work. The title of the best practice is Multicultural Lessons. The pillar of our let's say analysis is migration, but the category, I would say, so the sub-pillar I would define as education and social integration. The place of the best practice is Warsaw, Poland, and it's coordinated by the Multicultural Center here and the initiative Open House Foundation. Well, the maybe important information, and I would say this is one of the features of the projects, I would say, excellence, or something that could be treated as a best practice as well in its organizational layer, is that the Multicultural Center is a cooperation of the city of Warsaw and NGOs. And since 2023, that is the beginning of the year, the initiative Open House Foundation is the leading organization. And the interesting thing is that it took over from the previous organization the running of this project that I'm talking about. So basically, there's a little bit of there's much cooperation or collaboration, but there is also a little bit of competition in terms of the ideas implemented in the projects. The financing is basically by the city, but also there sometimes is some external money engaged in, for example, the Norwegian funds. There is a clear interdisciplinary approach applied here in this project, urban social integration on the one hand, and education or youth education. The approach for data collection in terms of how I am proceeding here is I am using open access information, but I have also contacted the organizers. I talked to the coordinator, and I'm also planning to survey and document the activities of the initiative and possibly also the participants. Now, for whom the project? Children, as I said, but there are two blocks. They're like two pillars. On the one hand, elementary or primary school children, and also high schools. So these are two separate or simultaneously running programs. What's interesting, these programs include voluntary or forced migration, children with voluntary or forced migration experience. Why, or what is the aim of the project? To build an open society aware of culture and social diversity, and of course capable of functioning with this diversity. There are various forms applied or taught in the frame of these workshops, but it's basically about education via play, teaching multicultural communication using various tools. And what's important, the overarching principle is not to tell the audience what to think, but to equip them with knowledge and tools to form their own opinions. So teaching to think, to observe, and to analyze. These are the pictures show these two types of workshops that are organized. On the left-hand side, you see the one for children. On the right-hand side, you see the one for the slightly older audience or participants. And let's say the scope of these lessons, their number is related to the availability of educators who, of course, in their daily activities are engaged with their work with migrants, but they bring their professional experience to these sessions. As to the organizational structure, the educators consult the team leader on a let's say on an everyday basis. They present their lesson plans, so everything basically is under control. And there are mutual lesson visits so that the educators can learn from each other. And of course, as a principle, discrimination or hate speech, which is maybe not that obvious nowadays, of course, is not tolerated both from facilitators and participants. This is important to mention. Okay. Well, as for methods of involving the community, well, this is clear. These lessons are organized for children, but they are not, in principle, they're not organized in schools, but at the Multicultural Center. So the teacher usually chooses a lesson of interest from a set available, and the school makes a reservation. Sometimes some workshops can also be organized in the school building if the school wishes to. And also there is a campaign organized by the city of Warsaw, which is called Summer in the City, and in the frame during summer, in summer, also some longer format workshops are organized. Got some sunshine in my eyes. Okay, as for the achieved results, as I said, this is an initiative which from the beginning of the year is run by the Open House Foundation, Open House Initiative Foundation, but it's it started, its first edition was in 2021, but in the period from January to October 2023, 184 lessons altogether were organized, and 4,377 students from our schools have participated. And here I have a quote from the coordinator, by the coordinator. She says, "It is challenging to measure the change occurring, but we carefully listen to teachers' opinions and suggestions and try to implement proposed improvements." And then she is also talking about a response or an evaluation by the teachers of one of the projects they provided. And she is saying that only 6% of teachers gave a negative response. Well, of course, every project has its challenges and limitations or side effects. One limitation or challenge is the availability of educators who are, as I said, are engaged in daily, everyday responsibilities related to working with migrants. A very I would say important limitation, I called it the perspective. is that changing attitudes, building and changing attitudes is not an overnight process, and sometimes it requires much more, or usually does, than a single lesson or a set of lessons. But it is interesting that some schools decide to come back after some time and ask for more or continue in the frame of their schoolwork. There are, of course, also some financial constraints, but the project seeks some additional funding from external grants. There are also some risks. According to the coordinator, there are no obstacles to implementing multicultural education throughout the project. There is some competition, as I said, between NGOs, but this I would personally treat as a positive phenomenon. A true threat is that there's a risk that multicultural education will focus on observable, that is easily observable manifestations of culture and not delve into the beliefs, values, and convictions behind them. Now, the excellence of the project, for me, this is my evaluation, it is long-term perspective. As it focuses on children, we will surely observe the effects of such programs in the future. As to the innovative character, it maybe in its idea, it is not very innovative, as multicultural education is carried out in many different by many different institutions in Poland or in other places in Europe and in the world. But I would say that the organizational structure of the Multicultural Center and the way the projects are run, the competition between the NGOs and the cooperation between the city and the NGOs is a type of innovation itself. It's possible, of course, to implement this project in other cities and communities, and there are no special risks to that. I would say that also in the, let's say, international perspective, here are some quotes from the coordinator from our meeting. She is saying that the larger the institution offering such lessons, the more likely schools are to trust it and allow students to participate. So maybe this is an idea that it's better when a school or a larger organization organizes this than an individual person, but of course it's possible to do it differently. She is also saying that there are no cultural limitations in Poland. The only limitation is the concern for the participants themselves. This is a very, I would say, very important sentence here. One should not tell someone with refugee experience what it is like to be a refugee, as this risks re-traumatizing the person, not to mention that they usually know much better than us what it is like. This is what the coordinator is saying. And geographical location and climate do not affect the possibility of conducting lessons. So throughout our Visegrad countries, as well as in other places, in this project, such projects can be and are possibly carried out. However, considering that migration and integration and multiculturalism are very sensitive topics, it may turn out that they are considered too risky for schools. For example, the issue of the humanitarian crisis on the Polish-Belarusian border. And here, just an example of how the initiative is developing. This is a picture, not a very good picture, but one from the website, from the Multicultures website. As you see here is a telephone number to contact for migrants. In other cases, in emergency cases, but also if they want to be informed by the Multicultural Center about various issues. And here we can see an example of online classes carried out by the center. So additionally, if someone wants to and is not able to participate in person, he can also, or she can click on that small window. Here you can see an example of some classes on Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva. This is truly an important initiative. And as our next presenter, I'd like to ask Andrea to talk a little bit about addressing climate change on local level, Rain Garden in Samorin. Samoria in Hungarian.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, you may share your screen now.
I apologize. I have to restart my my presentation just in a moment.
Okay.
While I'm starting the sharing, I will just start the introduction. Actually, I'm coming back to the very first topic that we heard today from the Czech Republic. Yes, and because it's all about the climate change. And now I will be able to share. I'm really sorry, for some reason it doesn't want to share my presentation.
Then I suggest that you change places with Gyula. Gyula, I ask you.
Yes, but thank you.
Follow with your presentation. Meanwhile, please send me, Andrea, via email your presentation and I will share the screen. But Gyula right now will talk about Piroska Commando. Gyula, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me, right? Okay. So I'm going to talk about the Piroska Commando, the food delivery and medicine delivery for elderly people during the pandemic in Budapest, and how this is a good practice. A little bit about the name Piroska. I don't really think I have to describe the story for children about the Little Red Riding Hood, who is taking some food to the grandma, but unfortunately, she faces many challenges during her way. And these challenges can be somehow a metaphor for the wolf and the COVID pandemic. I don't really have to describe what happened to us in the last 3 years of the pandemics. But these gave many chances to many people to rethink and reevaluate what actually they are doing. The whole Piroska Commando, which is literally the Little Red Riding Hood Commando, and why it's a commando, I'm going to talk about that. It was established in 2020, not 23, sorry, in March, and it started operating in 2020, April. There was a decreasing number of consumption by understandable reasons. During the first wave, it was a total lockdown for the brief first part of the pandemic in Hungary. So many people stayed home and basically nothing was happening. So in many cases, there were some jobs were lost, and it was an increasing demand for there was an increasing demand for delivery, but not all types of deliveries. So there was a mismatch between consumption and the service supply. Companies were losing money, and somehow they tried to live on and carry on. And despite there were some adequate answers from the government, but they were really slow as an administrative issue. So delivery workers on their own decided if they are already on the streets, why they cannot really help, and why shouldn't they help? So they decided to gather, and they decided to help people on the streets. Why and who did that? And actually what they did. Since charity activities were basically cancelled, like all activities, and delivery workers were quite aware of the problem that if they meet with the clients as they are delivering food, maybe they can spread the virus. So they decided to be very conscious about not spreading the virus, but spreading health equipments or medication or food or any necessary crisis packages if it's on the need. The whole Piroska Commando was set up in Budapest, in all city, but later they accompanied with the 9th district and the 6th district and several different delivery companies were joining the forces of the commando of Piroska, and it became very advantageous for those who were in need in times of the first COVID pandemic wave, because in many cases there was no data about who is stuck in the quarantine and why they cannot just move out, and maybe sometimes people were just too scared to move, and they denied to get any contact with friends and family, and this resulted many also psychological issues. So in many cases the Piroska Commando, since it was based by one specific company which called Hajtás Pajtás, they received less and less orders from their clients. They started to work after their working hours, and they started to cooperate with other voluntary groups. For example, Budapest Bike Mafia, despite their name, they are not aggressive, they are not mean, they are not causing any harm. They are actually doing some kind of guerrilla voluntary work, and they are feeding homeless people and delivering supplies and medicine for those who are in need. So the Piroska Commando just started to expand, and new initiatives like the Vészfutár, which is literally delivery in need, so taking some actions when it's needed for those who are in disadvantage, also joined the forces of the commando. So basically the Piroska Commando became an umbrella voluntary group. It wasn't even an association, so it is totally informal, and people were cooperating together through communication through Facebook. Why? As I said, there was no something like nationwide coordination, and it's embedded in the legal system in Hungary, since in many cases social care and social activities are delegated on the local government level. So districts and cities are responsible for the social services. The nationwide coordination was not really possible from the side of law. Of course, later on, the coordination became more and more advanced, but yet some kind of social service still remained by the local administrative units. And since, as we all know, administrative units in many cases reflect a little bit slower because that is a very unknown situation, and the whole system is very rigorous and rigid. It's sometimes very hard to confront these issues. And initiatives and voluntary initiatives like the Piroska Commando helped the work of the local governments and helped the work in Budapest, for example, in the district 6th and 5th also, but everywhere around Budapest. So in the first wave of the pandemic, there was some data who were in quarantine, but later on, the growing number of ill people and growing number of people being quarantined, it was not possible to achieve and get those data from the central administrative units who were responsible for that. So in that sense, these voluntary groups started to advertise themselves and started to make cooperation and make some kind of informal agreement with local administrative units. Also, people who found themselves in a hard situation during quarantine, they could contact through Facebook pages and Facebook messages. They could reach these members of the commando anytime they want. So what are the results reached during this work? First of all, in the 6th district, people were delivering so-called crisis packages with hand sanitizers, but also some basic and long-term food, also delivering masks in the mailboxes for free, guaranteed that the citizens and inhabitants of the district will pay attention for not just keeping the distance, but keeping themselves safe by wearing the mask. And the delivery was provided as well, so they didn't even have to contact anyone. Also, in the 9th district, it was interesting because social lunches, what was provided by the local government, by the district, was also helped to deliver by the commando as well. And they supported private initiatives like small companies or small entrepreneurs who were making face masks for long term, so washable face masks. Those face masks were delivered to hospitals for healthcare workers to provide their health and to provide their possibilities living through the pandemic. Also, in order to spread the information about the work of the commando, they advertised themselves, as I mentioned. And how they did that? They produced leaflets and in the shops and in the markets, local markets, they posted these information packages, these informations about the work of the commando, in order to inform also those who are not on Facebook or social media and who is not in connection with in contact with the local administrative unit. So these were the very big results what they reached during this process. And as you can see, many types, many companies were joining the actual work. Of course, the work of the commando was not without any difficulties, and one of the most important was the lack of fundings. Since it is an informal gathering of people as voluntary work, legally it is not really possible to give money to an entity who is not even existing. So only those donations could have been accepted, which were delivered to the center points or the contacts of the Piroshka Commando. So the financial support due to its legal status was not really possible. But fortunately, for example, in the 9th district, it was created an account for those who are willing to donate, and the local district was helping the commando with food and also other supplies. Another important question was the case of communication, because at its peak point, more than 500 voluntary delivery people were working for the commando, which is an extreme large number, and the communication was, since it's not an official organization, they didn't have the best practice how to communicate. So basically they used their Facebook page as a message board and as a communication platform. And here you can see a quote from the organizer of the Piroshka Commando. This was a public announcement put on their Facebook page that please only those who really come indicate that they will be there, because it is really hard and extremely hard to coordinate that many people. And if they just put a like on, if they put I will be there, which we all know we do on social media, it is confusing those who are organizing this event and organizing these issues. Definitely it is a best practice which was totally voluntary and based on the willingness of people to help other people. And this is maybe a one-time situation, but we can learn from the best practice, or we can learn from the lessons what they were making. Since the adaptation possibilities are very limited, hopefully we won't need any kind of Piroshka Commando anymore, because that would mean another pandemic is happening. But yet now we know that there are people who are willing to help. The problem that not all settlements or local governments have the openness for this kind of cooperation, and the case of being unknown and being voluntary sometimes means a disadvantage, because there is no legal representative who you can communicate with or the local government can support. There is a need for a minimum working number of voluntary people. It depends on the size of the city or the district, but 10 to 50 volunteers are there to minimum to provide that kind of service, which is provided voluntarily. And it takes time and it takes effort and it takes a lot of energy from those, not only who are delivering these things, but those who are organizing it. So the one who is putting their hands on this kind of issue, they should be very prepared, because logistics of this type of organization is very hard, because it's very informal. So you do not delegate, you do not give orders as usually you do when it's a formal structure. There is a must for having trust within the locals towards the delivery, and this is also a problem that the smaller the settlement is, the lack of trust, or even the larger the settlement is, the lack of trust is there for the people, for the delivery. So in many cases, delivery people or bike riders within the city are considered as enemies. And maybe this is good in one sense, because these kind of voluntary actions can improve the image, but yet this can also withdraw a little bit of success or efficiency. What are the risks and the threats? The biggest risk is that you are spreading the COVID, not delivering what you want, but also people are sometimes less devoted after being engaged towards helping when the situation of pandemic is over. So the Piroshka Commando ended its work by the end of 2020. and it's very hard as a risk to maintain the number of members. During its peak time, as I said, it was more than 500. And if people are in need and people got used to it, that it is working like that, you have to maintain that, but it's sometimes very hard. Despite all these negative connotations, what I said about the maintenance, it was a very positive initiative and approach how people could help each other during the pandemic. And this is a very good practice, what we all learn from. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gyula. And right now I ask Andrea whether it's working now, the screen sharing, or not, because I have the presentation here. No, it's not working, so I share the screen and you may just tell me when to switch.
Yes, thank you very much, and I apologize for this. It seems it's not only me who got the cold, but my computer as well. For some reason, it doesn't want to cooperate.
Okay.
Thank you. As I previously mentioned, I'm getting back to the first presentation. It's about urban resilience and how the people in this project reacted to climate changes. The project itself is of a much smaller scale of the project that we saw from Marcel's presentation. This project was implemented in Šamorín. Šamorín is a town of approximately 15,000 inhabitants, south of Bratislava, 20 kilometers from Bratislava. We can switch now, please. Very usual picture that you would see nowadays in our towns when after more rain or after heavy rain downpours, there are big puddles, either directly on the roads or at the edges of roads. And this has been the situation in this place on Parkova Street in Šamorín for long years, and while this street is quite busy street, it's a street that connects the main road with the center of the city. A lot of people would pass, a lot of cars would pass, and this pond would be there often for days, and that caused inconveniences mainly for the pedestrians. In 2022, some inhabitants, citizens of Šamorín said that this is enough, we would like to do something about it. And they made a proposal, and the proposal was that they would build a solution that would soak in the water into the soil. This was a very new one in Šamorín. And it all started out with digging a big hole. So, this was a physical reconstruction of the roadside. The ditch was at some points 1.3 meters deep, and it ran parallel to the road. And then it was filled by permeable materials, big stones, almost with geotextile permeable or to water, but not silt. And then at the end, it got some substrate on it and with pebbles and again, big river stones on the top. The whole work actually took 3 days only. And then at the end, we can see the result at the bottom of the picture. On the bottom picture, it looked like this. No plants yet, and that was the next step after a few days when we can switch. Yes, after the few days the planting started into this water garden, actually a few weeks later, not a few days, and there were different species put out depending on where did this area get more water in. So species which were mere for wet habitats were planted to the core of the core part of the garden, to the part where you can remember where this little pond used to be, and there it's soaked in slowly, and then drought-tolerant plants were planted on the margins that were flooded only on occasions or short-term only. You can see in the presentation also some of the names of the plants that they were planted. Thank you. The next one. Yes. This is what it looked at the end when it was ready. Actually, this garden that was built requires minimal management, and the concept proved successful. It was tested in summer 2023, and since then the water was directed from the roadside to the ditch and soaked in actually within 3 hours. So whatever heavy rain came in, it soaked in, it disappeared from the road in 3 hours, and the roadside got dry, safe, and the water actually returned to where it belonged to the soil, and help the vegetation to in the rain garden. The project was successful also because it didn't need big budgeting. It was the whole budget was around 5,000 euros, and most of it was funded by the municipality through the participative budgeting. I will talk about it later. And also there was a smaller grant from ZSA Foundation. The next slide, please. When it comes to the interdisciplinary approach, actually the whole project was initiated by a citizen who was who couldn't watch anymore the situation on the street. Then she contacted the municipality. And the municipality actually tested and measured the physical features of the terrain, and prepared the plans where to dig, what to dig, and so on. And also the municipality was the one who was in contact with the traffic department, and they also had to get involved into the project implementation, because during the building of the garden, the traffic had to be controlled, and there was, of course, the subcontractors who got involved. As I said, the municipality got involved, a foundation of a bigger corporation got involved, funding, and also, but most of all, it was the citizens who coordinated all this work. And that was that is very important to say and to highlight, to stress, because this is a very good positive example for other citizens, for other projects which are in a project like this, where we are presenting bigger examples, like maybe a small one of small scale, but for the citizens in a town like Šamorín, this is a really big change for better. Okay, thank you very much. And the next one, yes, as I said, community was very important. Participatory budgeting had been here in Šamorín since a few years now, and it's been very successful. And this is how it was actually Valeria whose presentation is this, and who prepared the case study as well. She was the one who initiated this and coordinated this. And wrote the project, and then the citizens of Šamorín actually could vote for the project, and this is how the project got funding from the municipality. Yes, the next one, please. Yes, thank you. Of course, there are some risks. Of course, people were used to just pass through this little part, because there is a bus stop, a bus station very nearby. So whenever somebody is in a real hurry, they wouldn't go around, but would go through this little part. So trespassing it was formulated as a risk when planning the garden. Unfortunately, due to all kinds of safety issues, the municipality didn't allow to build any catwalks so it had to stay like this. Actually, after these months of having the garden, there is we cannot see real problems with this. There is only one little place where there's a marginal part of the rain garden where really people really do shorten their roads, but they wouldn't walk through the garden. It's really nice. So I would say also the visual, what it looks like, that it's also very different. It would stop people now going through it. And they would they would go around it and trespass only at the very edge when they're shortening their ways. The second risk is the natural succession. Of course, the plants were planned for the garden in a way that there would be a minimum requirement for managing them. And also the whole garden was planned in such a way, but there will be some need for checking on the plants and maybe some planting some new ones. But also there is the risk that there would be additional plants starting growing with more intense growth. Maybe that could harm the garden, maybe from saplings from trees nearby. And this could also, if they would start growing really fast, that could be a danger also for the vehicles, because it's a very busy road, as I said. So although the original idea was that the garden should not require almost any management, but there will be some management needed for the plants as well. Another risk is for the plants, again, now not the garden being a risk for the road, but the road being a risk for the plants, and that's the winter road maintenance and using salting on the roads during winter time. So this could we are testing it now, although this year we didn't have such weather yet where we would have needed it. We will see in the next month, next year, to what extent this has influenced the garden. Yeah, actually, yes. As for the adaptation and possibilities, as I said, when it comes to the actual idea of involving citizens into solving problems, this is a very positive example, and there have been some short films made about it and spread through social media and the local websites to the citizens. It's a very frequently visited road by cars, and also, as I said, many people walk there to the bus station. So and they like it, of course. So it's a very good example for citizens to motivate them to get involved when there is a problem. Just formulate the solution, and there is also a possibility to for getting funding from the municipality. When it comes to the actual technical solution, there is a scale limitation which says that in context of the cost effectiveness, it's the best is if the rain garden is solving a stretch of road instead of a single spot. As I said, there are different parts used technically also with different depths, and for checking how much water would get into different parts of the garden. So it's technically best if there is a longer part, not only one spot. And And also the geographic limitation, it's also to what the municipality did with all the measurements and so on. So there is a geographical, like geography allows you to build a water garden where the water can be really fluently directed into the garden. And it supports the success for diverting the water from the road. Yes, and I think this was the last slide. Yes, thank you. Yes. I really hope this is not my expertise, but I watched the garden, and then I have talked to Valeria about it a lot of times before, during, and after the implementation. It's really a hard project for many of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. I myself learned something today. And right now, we will continue with a Q&A session. And if somebody has a question, please use the raise hand button on the lower part of your screen. Meanwhile, I'd like to ask a question to you, Andrea. It's a good project, and have I understood well that substituting the ditches for these rain gardens can work well on, for example, the whole street?
Yes, that's the idea, and it should work better for a whole street than if you would plan it only for one spot, for one small spot. Yes.
Okay. Well, do you think these rain gardens have the capacity to handle flash flood dangers as well?
Oh, I'm like technically over asked here. As I said, I'm not the expert in this. I think it very much depends on the technicalities. Based on my knowledge about the soil in this part of South Slovakia, where the Danube actually by nature had built up this kind of soil, I should say maybe, but we also know about the flooding, so there is no rain garden that would stop like really big floods. It very much depends on how big flooding you are talking about. I think these solutions are very good ones for today's challenges in our cities, where in recent decades we didn't really think of water management and rainwater management above all. We regarded the rainwater as a problem that has to be diverted, and we didn't want to see it very often. And while on one hand, then what happened is that due to climate change as well, we are more often getting into big heavy rains where our systems just cannot absorb that heavy rain. So we have this water on the roads, on the sidewalks. On the other side, we are experiencing very dry soils in our cities. So we spend a lot of money on watering the trees, watering the flowers. And these type of gardens are a good solution for that, because they can divert the water from where we don't want to have it, from the road to the soil where we want to have it, and it also helps us what I mentioned maybe only briefly, what type of plants to use. So it also helps us to think about the planting as well. So maybe we need to rethink about which types of plants do we want to have in our cities, how much water they would need, whether they would start cooperating with nature also in our cities.
I understand. Thank you. Eva, I have a question to you as well, but before that, I'd like to ask Marcel, Do you know something about the insulation of the store? Because I seen in the presentation that there is a so-called thermowood insulation, but I don't know whether you know any more about that. And I also like to ask, what's the incentive for retail corporations to build buildings like that? Is it the cost effectiveness, the reason behind it? And if you could tell some sentences about the maintenance costs, because I would suppose that wood requires more frequent maintenance than traditional stone concrete buildings. So I don't know, how do you see that?
I believe that the motivation is quite simple for these corporations, and it's called corporate social responsibility. It's something like marketing for them, because nowadays, mostly with the younger generations, we are more aware of these ecological issues, resilience issues, etc. And all these banks, insurance companies, supermarket chains are very well aware of the fact that they have to be responsibly like dealing with environmental issues and all these aspects. So I think that the real motivation is just pure corporate social responsibility and all these marketing things. I don't believe there is any, say, like deep rooted feeling of responsibility. I'm sorry about that, but corporations do not work like that. They are not charities or NGOs. So this is the first thing. The second thing was about the insulation. I think they've used this wooden wool, which is actually like processed, what is it called? Cellulose, which is, you know, created by some technical process, and they create this wool which was used for the insulation. And regarding the maintenance, the facade was used, they used this thermally processed wood, which is some kind of like pressure and high temperature processed wood, and it actually does not need any maintenance. And inside the building it's the same. But my big question is, because now we are ahead of a huge project in Prague related to the main railway station, which is being now created by a Dutch or Danish studio, and the building should be made of wood. And the big question is, like, how many decades this building will last. So it's not about the main railway station, but it's also about the supermarket, because we do not know, because these projects are relatively new. Of course we have these all wood houses in Slovakia, for instance. We know in Poland as well, like these very nice looking old, like 100 years plus old houses, and they last quite, you know, without any maintenance for quite a long time. But we actually do not know what happens in, you know, this aggressive environment with salt, with, you know, the exchange of temperatures, because we are dealing with cities or towns, and it's actually a little bit different, you know, like direct sunshine. The Slovak houses or Polish houses are usually located in forests or meadows, you know, a little bit different environment than our aggressive cities. So who knows what will happen? But they claim, the companies, the building companies claim that they actually do not need much maintenance. But for how long? This is a big question. You know, no one knows. It reminds me of the story 20 years ago. You all remember when wooden window frames were changed for plastic window frames, and the companies boasted it will last for 100 years. How do they know? How do we know? You know, we have no experience with that, and the tests only proved, yeah, might be 20 years, and then the plastic will actually be decomposed because of the UV radiation and heat and cold. And this is what is happening now. After 30 years, these windows will have to be replaced in many places. So the company boasted, you know, 100 years, no problem, but who knows? Who knows? I wouldn't be able to predict, and I think no one is able to predict.
Thank you, Marcel. Fair enough. And Eva, as regards your presentation, my question is, do you know how many different national backgrounds on the children's side were represented in the project? So 5, 6, 7 nationalities, around something approximate.
Okay. Well, I don't have any precise information on that. This is the next step, I would say, when I continue researching. But I would say, yes, well, at least a couple, because not only Ukraine, but I know that there was, because there were also similar projects, not cultural lessons, but other integration projects. Already in 2016, when I first started to visit the center, because during the refugee crisis from the African one, that we worked on a integration policy for children of refugees at schools. So we had, I would say we had a couple of nationalities represented at that time. So I would say you mentioned 7, yes, at least 7, I would say. But I will tell you more after I visit the one of the their lessons next year, because I have agreed to participate in one of them and talk to the educators as well.
Okay, thank you. We will be glad to listen to your experiences next year. So I think that concludes the open workshop part. I thank you all for participating, and please do notice that the next workshop will be in January, the 12th of January, so please save the date. We will send an invitation for the participants as well, and we also welcome Gyula's cat. She just escaped. Okay, so next we will switch to a closed operational workshop as regards the project. Our guests, thank you for joining us, and I hope we'll see you next time.